Shall we begin?
It is so cold in the shop. What's up, everybody? Welcome to my 38-degree workshop. I did not have the workshop heated today, as today was supposed to be an editing day, and I thought I had all of the footage that I needed. But it turns out that the last card in the camera that I was supposed to be using is a dead SD card. And it is no longer useful to me, and the data that was on there is corrupted, which means, unfortunately, I lost some of the final footage of this when I did this back in... We had one particular warm week back in October, I think, that I did this. I lost some of that footage, and I lost some of the other footage from another project, which is a shame. But I'll just walk you through what I did, and we'll talk about it. And if you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'm going to try to incorporate some Q&A into the beginning or end of my videos moving forward. We'll kind of see what lends itself best to making the video. But I'm trying as a goal in this next chapter of the shop to be a lot more interactive than I was, the last time I was on YouTube regularly. So this is a Delta XL-10 10-inch table saw with a cast iron top. This was great. A few videos ago, I was actually fully restoring. I was doing upkeep and bringing back to full life my Craftsman 10-inch table saw. I bought that one off of Craigslist maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I think for $100. I think it was 100 or 125. And then this one I bought off of Facebook Marketplace 2 years ago for the high price of $50 or $75. I forget which. I've bought a lot of tools over the Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist over the years, so I don't always remember the exact number for which tool. But what happened is that when I was restoring that one, I got use out of it for about 2 weeks, and it was glorious. Brand new bearings. It was a delight to use. It was a joy. The motor melted on it, which was not unreasonable. The person I bought it from was the only user for that table saw, and he bought it new when it came out, 25, 30 years ago, and he said he used it almost daily, as he was somewhere between very, very dedicated hobbyist to side hustle, and was doing larger and larger projects. The reason he sold that was so he could upgrade. And sure enough, even though I'd vacuumed the motor out and vacuumed and cleaned the saw, it was just so caked and worn out in there. No big deal. A friend of mine gave me their old lathe motor from years and years ago, from one of their first Delta lathes or something like that. And it was a little underpowered, and unfortunately that one had a whole different electrical issue that I haven't figured out how to overcome. I'm not sure I can overcome it. So I needed a replacement motor for the table saw, which was going to be a few $100s at the time. This was a few years ago before things really got jacked up in price. And I really needed a solution for that weekend. So I found this on Facebook Marketplace that weekend. I could pick it up that weekend. And with a flat screwdriver, a thick flat screwdriver, and a 6-inch crescent wrench, you too can take this thing and pull it apart and fit it in a Chevy Sonic, just so you guys know. So we'll just call it $75. I bought this, got it home, assembled it, got the job I needed done complete, and then I've been using this ever since. Kind of it's an original slapped together state. I only had to separate it from its base. I didn't have to fully pull it apart. But as I've been on this kind of new journey of craftsmanship and being the highest level of craftsman I can possibly be, I've been going through my shop, cleaning, sharpening, oiling, checking for square and true, just about every tool I have in the shop, as a way of making sure that I am taking care of my tools. And although I don't fully stand behind the adage of you'll know a craftsman by the quality of their tools, I do think there is something to getting your as clean and kept as nice as you possibly can, especially because I couldn't replace some of these tools now if I wanted to. I'm hoping to change that with some of the work I have ahead of me, but even if I had the money, I would want someone to see that I treat my tools with a certain level of care and respect, and that's how I treat the projects that I do. So I think it's worthwhile to try to keep your tools and things as up to snuff and clean as possible. This would be a good example. I don't have a great way of covering this. Even when I cover it with like a blanket or a tarp or something like that, I feel like somehow the dust still makes its way in there. But every little while I will vacuum it out. I'll make sure everything is still spinning. But once I get a motor and a counter shaft for this, I'll tear this down, completely rework it and put it back together and find a way to have it not in my dusty shop. But this was really fun. The paint colors are what I had on hand. Bright pink was maybe not necessarily my first choice, but it was the higher contrast of the options that I had that had the durability of paint that I wanted. I wanted to make sure I had a metal enamel paint so that it would take all of the wear and abuse. The person that had this before me, I think, used this for a work surface as well as their table saw, because there's a lot of rust and pitting in here that I certainly could not take down. Otherwise, I would compromise the flatness of my cast iron top, and I do not want to do that. The whole reason I searched so hard for this was so that I could have something with a cast iron top. This fence is not the greatest design. It is an old design. A lot of the saws from this era were like this, where they have two supports and a pinch that pulls itself tight. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but the hook is a little crooked. And even when I try to find ways of straightening it, there's this tie rod that goes along inside the hollow chamber. And when you pull it tight, it really, really wants to rack just a little bit, which pulls the end of my fence out by a 32nd or so, which causes some errors. But this is true with all of the table saws of this era. And the Craftsman has a little bit of ways that you can tune that. This doesn't really have anything in the cast handle where you can shim, and it does not have anything on that hook. So I just make sure that with a framing square or my large tri-square that I get it as square as possible when I go through a lot of repeated cuts that are thin and long, so that I know they're going to be square for my project. For anything that's truly critical, I do it the best that I can. I leave stock on, and then I'll go and I'll put that project edge up through my thickness planer, and I'll get those to be perfectly square and true all the way through their full length. So the longer you're in woodworking, the more you work to the quality of tools, the reasonable quality of your tools. So this was good. This has a lot of neat features on it that I like. I do like the fence in general. I just want to find a better, clever way to keep this thing square. But I'll get there eventually. It's really just setup time. It doesn't really affect the quality of my work because I make sure it's square. But speed is everything once you start getting more and more work. But I like it. Once I got the rails were somehow out of square. But now that they're not, this thing slides like a dream. It's just about due for wax, maybe in the next 2 months. But boy, when I first did it, you'd push it a few inches and it would slide almost right off the table saw, which caused me a little bit of a panic, but it didn't actually fly all the way off. I like the way that it stores things. Eventually, I'm going to get some 1/8 inch plywood, and I'm actually just going to plug up all of these holes so I can put a vacuum here to collect the dust. But table saw is really just maybe a quarter of the work that I do, and then it's a lot of joinery and other tools. So typically I will open up the doors even on a cold day and let a lot of the dust go outside. I'll clean up afterwards. I'll wear a mask if I have to do more than 3 or 4 cuts. And it's really manageable for what I do regularly. if I'm going to do a lot of table saw work, I come up with other precautions to try to capture a lot of the dust. But I work with what I have now that's reasonable, that isn't going to gum up the works for the rest of what I'm doing. Black made sense for my options. I like having high contrast paint just in general, but especially for the areas where I want the contrast of other things that I'm cutting. And when I put little pencil marks for reference marks, I want them to be on something that's of a light color. Pink's what I got. It is what it is. And I'll put some finish shots of this so that you guys can kind of see the before and after of how well it cleaned up. I didn't have to replace the bearings, which is great. This thing raises like a dream with almost no effort. It's really nice. It's really smooth. It's very quick. The blade, it stays reasonably square for everything that I've done to it and the work I've put it through so far. I wish it wasn't direct drive. I wish it was belt driven, but this was the game I was playing a couple of years ago when I really just had to find the best solution I could for the time. I think it's a great table saw. Someday down the road here, I'm going to be able to get the motor I need for the Craftsman, and I'm going to use that. It's a little bit bigger and it's a little bit more capable for what I'd like it to do. And then I'll probably tear this down further, try to preserve all of the labels, and try to find a paint that's more similar to this blue, or at least similar in theme and feel to it. Maybe it won't be blue, but kind of a faded, lighter color, and restore the wings and everything to that color. Once I sand it down almost to bare metal, I just care that it's nice and rough and smooth, rough texturally so I can paint on it, but so that it's smooth and there's no more defects. And then I'm going to give this away. I'll give it to one of the woodworker friends I have who are just getting started in woodworking and don't have a table saw yet. But I've had a lot of help on my journey in a lot of ways as a woodworker, and I would love to. It doesn't need bearings, it does great, but maybe I'll replace the bearings just anyway so that they basically have a brand new table saw with maybe some sort of a fence fix until they decide to either get an auxiliary fence or are smarter than I am and find a better way to keep this really square. But I like a lot of things about this. I think this is a great table saw. Most importantly, for any of you who are just starting, like I said earlier, this thing, once I removed the stand, it's heavy. Maybe you need two people. I'm a larger person that's used to moving heavy things around. But maybe you need some help. Find a friend, find a buddy, buy them a slice of pizza, whatever. But this was $75, and with the sandpaper, scouring pads, a bottle of some kind of spray degreaser, the 3-in-1 oil, maybe it's $40 of cleaning supplies if you have absolutely none of it and you're buying all of it, maybe not all on sale. It's going to be $40 or $50. Maybe you don't have tools that you need. If you go to Harbor Freight or somewhere similar, you can get a package of their channel lock type pliers, and you can get a package of their screwdrivers, and you'll be able to take this whole thing apart, get yourself a mallet if you want to replace the bearings. You'll be able to take it apart and build it back up. Bearings themselves are always going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 to $12 a piece. So even with bearings, it's going to be $50 to restore yourself a table saw like this. Cast iron, direct drive, from the 90s. It's going to be heavy, but it'll yield you a lot of quality work. It'll yield you a lot of really great references with your table. It'll do a lot for you learning how to be a great quality woodworker in terms of the technique, in terms of like the process. You'll get to know the tool. I would recommend learning how to sharpen your carbide tipped saw blades while the power is off, probably while they're not attached, so that you can really get the most out of a table saw like this. So all in, I had all of that stuff on hand because I clean and restore tools kind of regularly, honestly. But, it would have cost me $75 for this, maybe $5 in gas, $50 in cleaning supplies. So it's $130. There is not a table saw anywhere at any big box store that you're going to get that would rival the quality and capability of this for that same amount of money. If you have to replace the motor, you're in trouble. So there's some gambling that you're doing, but get to know the person, try to find out the story of the table saw, try to find out the quality that it's in. Look for how dirty and dusty and cobwebby it is, things of that nature. But if you're clever, you can really get a jump on the capability of your workshop and your space if you pay attention and you do a little bit of hunting. If you do a little bit of hunting, you can make long strides in your building up the tools of your workshop. So I hope you thought this was entertaining. If you hear me stuttering a little bit, it's because it is now almost 35 degrees in my workshop, and I'm ready to take this footage back inside to edit together to get the video out for tonight. But I really appreciate you watching. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below. I'm going to try to be more interactive and incorporate those into my videos so that maybe you gain something interesting out of it. If it's a disrespectful question, that might not make it in, but you guys get it. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I so hope that this is my last take so I can go inside and be warm. Cheers.